So, you've got all the data and the evidence. I'm going to suggest some questions that you might now like to use with that data so that you can take forward the whole process of development. So the first question might be around the whole business of what is the data telling us about the standards that our students have reached. So you might ask the question, what percentage of our students are reaching each grade or stage? You might be asking the question whether some students in some instruments are doing better than in other instruments. So for instance, are guitar players reaching grade 5 more easily than the vocalists? And do our students reach higher standards of work in some particular areas of our model of learning compared with other areas? So are they showing stronger standards and progress in technical development than in the whole area of the ability to communicate character and meaning? So if that's about standards, what about progress? Well, the obvious one is how much progress do our students actually make across each stage? So is it one stage every year or grade every year? Is it half a stage or less? How much progress are they actually making? The next question you might ask is, are these rates of progress consistent across different instruments and the voice, or are there clear differences? So do brass players make much faster progress than woodwind players in the later stages of their development? It might also be that students make good progress at the very early stages and less good progress later on. So what's the reason behind that? We need to make sure again that this kind of evidence and data is being thought about for the whole service, about all our students, and for separate groups of instruments. We've certainly found in Hampshire that that debate around the progress and standards achieved by different instrument groups is a really interesting one to have. And if possible, though as I said already, it is quite hard, can we ask those questions about individual students? It's interesting that that is useful to track the progress of those individual students, but it can also form the basis for some really interesting discussions with individual members of staff when we're looking at performance management and quality assurance. We can see that this individual student is making really good progress. And what about these two here? Why aren't they making so much progress? Now, it's the debate that matters then. There may be very good reasons for that change in progress. But it's actually having the debate around, this is what the evidence is showing us. What can we do about our teaching and therefore the students' learning to make sure that standards are higher and progress is more secure and faster for as many young people as we can? If that's the kind of questions you might be asking, it should give you a whole range of development work with staff. And I think there's probably two areas that this might happen. The first thing, and you'll probably be instinctively aware of where the really good progress and standards are already, we need to find out why it's happening. What exactly is happening in that instrument or in that area of learning that enables the students to make that much progress? Try and unpack it and then share it. It's interesting. We often talk about teachers needing to model for students in lessons. The question we might have is, how often do we model for all our staff what the really good teaching looks like so that students make faster progress? And yes, clearly, where progress doesn't seem to be so strong, where it's weaker, we can actually use the kind of evidence to work with those staff to put in place some kind of professional development program so that the teaching improves and then the students eventually make more progress. And here's a thought about professional development work across a whole hub. There is a temptation that we see a latest headline, we see the latest initiative and decide that's what we need all our staff to do. I think if we look at schools for our model, we might see a very different way of organising professional development. For them, what they're looking at is the data and what it tells them about the progress their students are making. The analysis of it and the questions leads them to consider, we really need to be sharing this particular aspect of teaching. It's working really well in this department, we need to share that across the whole piece. Or we actually aren't doing very well at pupils being aware of their own learning. How can we do that across the whole school? The basis for that has been their analysis, their questions of the data and the evidence they've got. And I think that's something that we should be considering more clearly for our music services and our Music Hub professional development.